Good evening. Thank you for joining us again this evening. Um, all these nights we've been having this program, like I always say, I'm always super excited. With every guest that comes to the program, I am super excited because there is always some history there. There is a story to be told. There is a story worth hearing that's going to be shared in the course of the program. And tonight is no different. As you know, over the last 3, 4 weeks now, we've been talking to different people about legacy, about how we harness our past and we use that as leverage for the future. And this evening, we have another really special guest joining us. We, as you know, Tuesdays we focus on music, the music ministry, and people who have done some great work in that space. And this evening we have with us Funmi Gibson-White. Funmi has been leading a choir for many years. For some of you who maybe you follow the Festival of Life organized by the Redeemed Christian Church of God, she's part of that choir. She sings there from time to time. And she's also the head of a choir, of the choir, the tribe of Judah at Jesus House in the UK. And she's got an amazing story, and we're just going to share with her this evening, listen to what she has on her heart, whatever message God has placed on her heart for us this evening. We'll listen to that. But before I bring Fumi on, I'd want to encourage you to share the links. I think we are live on YouTube, we're live on Facebook, we're live on Instagram. The handles are on the screen. And please do share this. Fumi has a really exciting story that we're going to hear from her this evening. So, without wasting much time, I want to welcome Fumi Gibson White to the program this evening. Fumi, you are welcome to the program this evening.
Thank you so much, Akin. Such a privilege to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And yeah, I just look forward to sharing my heart and really hearing the questions that you have for me. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. And we just dive into it, given the time we have for the program. Now, for me, one of the questions I have for you is this: when did you discover that you had this talent, this gift, if we'll call it that, or this passion for music, and how did it grow from whatever it was way back then to what it is now? Where did the journey of being involved in music start from?
Actually, mine is a very interesting story. I think if I cast my mind back, I actually was my grandma who told me that you have a singing gift. And she said to me that when she came to my nursery, I think I must have been about maybe 4 or 5, she had come to my nursery, and I was in a Christmas play and I had sang. So she said to me, "Oh, you have such a good voice." And I guess maybe as I grew up, I just watched out for that. Now the story completely changed. And by that I mean, the innocence of what, your grandma tells you you've got a good voice. You just believe your grandma. But obviously, as the journey went ahead and I was exposed to other singers, then you start to think, do I really have a good voice? But anyway, back in Nigeria, I joined the choir in my church. Is a Catholic church. And I noticed that I enjoyed singing. I noticed that I always loved the hymns. I always loved to be with other people who were singing. So for me, I wouldn't say that there was anything there that made me feel like, oh, I was called to be a worship leader. I just really enjoyed singing. And then when I relocated to the UK, I mean, I put, to be honest, that to the side because I was studying and there were so many things happening then. And I really thought it was going to be anything until my wedding day. I joined my husband in his church. I started to go to the church before we actually got married, another RCCG church. And then on our wedding day, I decided to do a song, sing a song to him. And after, the pastor of the church said, would like you to join our choir. And I think that's when really the story changed. At the time in the choir, to be honest, I was thinking to myself, this is a temporary thing. I'm not really going to be, doing this for a long time. It's just, he wants me to join the choir because the way he put it was, help us out. We need manpower. So for me, it was a temporary thing. And I remember, they had a worship leader, a couple of worship leaders who would lead worship from time to time, and I would just be there. And then one of the days, the choir leader then said to me, gave me the mic and said, "Oh, I'd like you to do this song." And what happened that day was something I would never forget. The presence of God came down so mightily. People were falling. And honestly, I wouldn't even say that I had grown in my work with God. Not at all. Because if I think back at what I know now and what I knew then, I didn't even really know anything. I mean, I was newly married, gone from a Catholic church to a Pentecostal church, which was really a big thing. So I really didn't even understand a lot of things. I didn't even speak in tongues. I was just a simple girl in her mind, helping this pastor out. And I remember that I myself didn't really understand what was going on. And as I was singing the song, I actually stopped because I thought, what's going on here? And the pastor kept doing his head like, carry on, carry on, carry on. And at the end of the service, he said to me, you have a call on your life where worship is concerned. And I'm sure a lot of people will be thinking from then on, things started to happen. And actually, no. I mean, I sang the next Sunday, nothing really happened. I backed up for a very long time, nothing really happened. I was given the mic a couple of times. It was good worship, but nothing like that first experience. And then we relocated. We moved to church after about to Jesus House, and immediately I wanted to join the choir. And to be honest, I confess again, I just really loved the Jesus House choir. It was much bigger than the choir that I was coming from. The choir that I was coming from, the Redeemed choir that I joined at the time, only had maybe a maximum of 6 singers, including myself. And there I was looking at this Jesus House choir, and just had a lot of young people, loads of them, maybe about 30 or 40 of them. And I kept thinking, I want to be part of them, really for fun, not because, I mean, I always went back to that experience that I had in the church, but it was really never anything that I thought was serious. Anyway, I begged my way through the choir because at the time it was very difficult to get into that choir. And I remember begging the head of the choir then, we fondly call her Sister Talks. And she kept saying, you have to go to training, you have to do this, you have to do that. And I was thinking, I just want to sing. Anyway, I think I bugged her so much that she allowed me into the choir. And my journey then began. I started to grow. That was the first thing that happened. Again, I wasn't really thinking of this call or that experience, which I now know was just a sign for me never to forget. I believe that that was a monumental reminder from God for me as a person. But for many years, nothing really happened. And you know what? I was very happy to be a backing vocalist. It was such an honor, such a privilege to be doing that amongst this many, many talented people back then in Jesus House. And then I remember, obviously the choir leadership changed and somebody else was put in. And I don't know, for some reason, I just had a burden to help her. So she would always come to me and confide in me and ask me, can you help me with this? I want to do this. What do you think? And from there on, I guess I caught the burden of leadership, not necessarily as a worship leader, because the truth is, there were so many talented people there, and I didn't even think that there was any room for me. I don't even think I desired it, to be honest, because I think I was just so happy being a backing vocalist. I didn't really have it was beyond my reach, I would say, at the time. So I just helped her. She confided in me. She found a friend in me, and then she'll give me tasks to do. There were a couple of us that she would give things to do, help me out here. People that she would say, "Oh, could you just help me do this?" And I was just simply one of those people. And my task then was just to make sure that the uniform was going good, buy the uniform if it was needed. And again, choir leadership changed. In came another choir member who became the leader. And I was then officially made the assistant head, because they said, "Oh, you just do this role anyway. You do it simply. You've sort of like gone into the role, so we might as well just make it official. Can you be the assistant head?" And that was where the official role came in. Again, still pretty much in the background. I didn't really have, I wouldn't say I was a main worship leader, but I guess for a prayer meeting, for small services, they would ask me to help out in leading worship. And honestly, the comments that I got were not very good. But like, you need to be more confident, you need to just try your best. And whilst all those things were really true, because now I realize that actually there was work then. At the time, it was actually quite to be told that what you were doing wasn't really good enough. And but I carried on. And I remember that at the time I wasn't even called upon in any way to do anything. And simply the truth is, it was because I just wasn't up to scratch. And I remember that I took that to God in prayer. Now, not necessarily because, again, I wanted to be one, but because I would probably say, because I felt sidelined, or maybe I felt like, oh, people are saying I'm not good enough. What do I really need to do? I just felt a little bit embarrassed at the situation. And you know what? God said to me, "You're actually on my rota." And I thought, oh wow. And I held that. I never really, I shared it with my husband that, God said to me that I'm on his rota. And then what started to happen was, the people that would be on the rota would say, "Oh, I can't make it." And then there'll be nobody. Then it will be me. "Can you help us? Can you help us? Can you help us?" Until I officially made it onto the rota to be leading worship. And obviously, quite a big thing for me, because first of all, I didn't even think I qualified in any way. And I just thought, here I am, I've got to do this. And I always went back to what God has said to me then: "You are on my rota." I think that was my driving thing. Like, if I'm on God's rota, then I have to do it. It's not even negotiable now, because it's beyond me. And we carried on that journey. Still, maybe what you would say was the list on the list. I probably would have been at the bottom of those who were leading worship, but somehow God still used me. And I remember, my pastor then calling me and telling me that there's something special about you in terms of you're genuine when you worship. It's so real. And it encouraged me to do a bit more work on how I was doing things, and see myself start. Anyway, again, sorry, did you want to say something?
Yes. I don't want to break you in your flow, but you are unpacking so many leadership principles that I think we really need to pull this thing out a little bit. One, you talk about your grandmother, the influence your grandmother had on you. I think that is powerful. Then there's a bit I want to call out. You talked about the leader saying you had to go through some training, but you kept pushing. And did you feel they were picking on you? Did you feel offended when all of this rejection was going on?
I won't say offended. I felt, it's so funny, because if I try and classify that emotion, ashamed. And now that I've matured, I realized that actually that was just the lie of the enemy. Why shame? I felt I just felt it. I felt like the girl in the class who just always came last. If you understand, I just always was at the bottom of the class where this thing was concerned, because, and I wasn't blind, and these comments were not untrue. I know what the others were doing, but I felt I was really doing my best. And I mean, I got to a point where I actually said, I don't want to do it. It's not by force. There's so many things that I can do well and I can do really well. So I want to focus on those things. And I remember speaking to my pastor at the time, and he said, well, I understand what you mean, but I don't feel the release to say that you should leave the choir. And the truth is, there was a niggly part of me as well that was actually afraid to offend God. The one thing that I'm very
So you
aware
wanted to
of is,
leave the choir at one point.
yes, yes, I wanted to, because I want to stop being embarrassed or being looked at as this person who just cannot do it. Um, so I just didn't want to be that person. I didn't want to be the person who, as I said, it was always bottom of the class, embarrassing. It was just not what I wanted. So it was easier to run away. It was easier to run away, because you see, the thing is, they would always say we need help, and I would always feel like I needed to do it. So there will always be a comment, there will always be something said about how I did it or I didn't do it, and I was just exhausted, listening to those comments. Albeit, like I said, they were true, because as I matured and as God took me through this process, I realized what everyone was trying to say to me. At the time, I don't even think I understood it. I just knew that the others were so much better. But I don't even think that I even understood. Like, you can only fix a problem if you know what the problem is. I didn't even know what it
Absolutely.
was. I think that's why I got tired, because if I knew what it was, then I would be working towards it. I didn't even know I sounded funny or I sang fun. I didn't even know.
For me, you know something you're saying here that's striking me very, very strongly is the fact that there are so many people out there who maybe are in that position of life where all the voices speaking to them, speaking around them, are voices that are saying, you can't do it, you're not good enough. But then they stop. They accept that message, they accept that narrative, and they never take that step to go further, which you have done. Now, at the time you were going through all this emotion, through all this turmoil, and you were trying to figure out what was going on with you, did you have people around you telling you, don't worry, go ahead, you'll make it, you'll be good enough in the future?
Yeah, there were definitely people around me who would say, well, and it was always, they never really commented on my voice. So they would say, that was great worship experience, so blessed. Your worship was so genuine. So I started to now see the difference. Even, my leaders who would tell me that, that was not, even my choir leader who would say, oh, that was not good enough. They all admitted that there was something there in terms of the worship experience. So I guess maybe that was something to hold on to. Of course, the person who saw me cry the most was my husband. After, my husband would say that when I finish, he will be saying to himself that, I guess it's another counseling session tonight. So he, so he will be ready to counsel me after I had. But do you know what? If I can go to what really turned it around, because I haven't even spoken about then being leader of the choir. If I can really tell you what turned it around, you see, in your place of brokenness, if you try to find God, you will find God. And for me, there wasn't anything else. I felt, God has sent me on this message, and I'm not even equipped to do it. How can what and for me, I felt like, well, this is the time to actually know more about the God that I am even saying that I am worshiping. It's now to know, it's the time to develop my relationship with God. This is the time to love him more, to know him, and honestly, I worked on that relationship. I mean, today, funny enough, I was looking for some of my certificates to put in an application for something, and I found a card that I had written to God. And that just, and I thought to myself, funny enough that I'm going to be doing this, speaking about this tonight, I then find this card. And I wrote in there, Dear Lord, I just wanted, it was a thank you card, which I had bought, and I wrote it. I'm saying something that's about 10 years old now. And
So
I
a
wrote in
thank
there,
you
Dear
card
Lord,
to God.
yeah. And I said,
Wow.
thank you so much for helping me to lead worship today. Thank you so much for making it beautiful. Thank you for honoring me with your presence. Thank you for endorsing me. Thank you for making me know that I can do it. And you know what? That's one of the cards. I had many cards. I have journals this high of always writing letters to God. And those were the moments. See, I talk about them. People might be thinking, oh, wow, she went through something. I am so glad that I went through it, because it was the moment I built my relationship with God. It was the moment I understood that, what the love of God was. And for me, I was seeking that, if He loves me, then I've got to look. And I started to think that, how do you build? Because you see, to understand the relationship we have with God and to want to make it better, you have to start off with what you understand. So I started off with the relationship between myself and my husband. I love to please him. I'm happy when he's happy. I like to see a smile. I want to know he's happy with my decisions. And I started to think, okay, that's how I'm going to start off this relationship. First of all, I'm going to make sure that I don't do anything that's going to break his heart. I'm going to make sure that I write love letters, my
So,
journals, in
sorry,
those
let me
areas.
check this. In trying to fix the relationship with God and what was going on with your worship experience to God, you started with your husband.
So I started off, yes. So I had to, yes, I needed a template. Because remember that one of the things that we shy away from human beings is we cannot see God. We cannot. So we've been brought up, we've been told he's the highest of high, which is all true. It's true that he's God, he's sovereign. So a lot of us are not able to transcend away from that relationship. So it's always like a master slave relationship when God has promoted us to sons, to daughters, to lovers. So for me to be able to understand this God that I cannot see, I needed something that works for me in real life, which is the relationship with my husband. What are the things you would do for somebody you say you love? And then I thought, okay, I do this, I do this, I do this, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do for God, with God. So I'm going to write the card, know where to post it, but hey, I write the card, I put it away, I write in my journal, I close it. And there were times when I would be walking on the road and I would, because I wanted a conversation. There are times when you speak to God in your heart, it lives in your heart. But there are times when I actually want to have a conversation and I'm on the road. So I'll just bring out my phone, put it to my ears, and act as if I'm talking to somebody. But I'm really actually talking to God that, okay, so this situation, what are your thoughts about it? This is what I think. Or maybe I'm scared, I'm afraid. And those were the times when I really understood the God that I was trying to worship. That is
Fumi,
when
let me ask a question here. Sorry to cut you there. All these bits of and pieces of writing the letters, acting like you're talking to God on the phone, where did all that inspiration come from?
do you know? I don't know. I think it was from the decision that I had made that everything was failing. I mean, God had called me to this thing. I would always remember that first experience in the church. I would always remember the comments about the worship is genuine, refreshing. So I go, and each time I wanted to quit the choir, I didn't have a release. I was a bit scared that I would be offending God. So if He is calling me to this thing, we better sort it out together. So for me, what occurred to me was I needed to build my relationship with God. I needed to love Him to a place where nothing else matters, which means that let's just abandon everything and let's just focus on God. perhaps that might transpire into something, that's needed for this thing. And I think that those times were times when they're invaluable times. I still, obviously, I'm in the habit of writing in my journal, saying thank you. I don't buy as many cards because, I realize that I'm piling them up. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to write them in a book instead. Those were times when my faith increased. Those were times when, I knew who I was. The Bible says that those who know their God, they will do exploits. And I think that even though now I understand what was happening to me, I was getting to know God. I was getting to build that relationship. I was getting to closer to Him, which then translated into the other things that then went on to happen. I think I was just knowing God, and therefore things started to happen. These exploits that the Bible talk about
I
or
want to
talks.
ask a question on that. I want to touch on that because um, there's some words that have been coming out that I think are important here. You were working on yourself. People always talked about the experience, even at a time where there was still a lot to be desired. People talked about the experience. To what degree do you think this personal relationship that you have cultivated, whatever it is that influence that you've cultivated this relationship with God, you've developed this habit over time, to what degree do you think that has influenced this experience that you talk about?
I think to all degrees, to be honest, because you see, for me, when I think about, as leader in the choir now, I have such a burden for somebody who, you know, is the person that I was. So they believe God has called them. They're just struggling with their gift. They don't know how to make it work. I believe that that experience has actually sort of shaped me into this person where I have a burden for people. And then, of course, I just focus on God in all I do. You're never gonna please people. And it's still happening now. People are not gonna be pleased. They're gonna be pleased. You just have to have one focal point and one audience, and that is God. So me, this whole thing is really about, like I said, the relationship and that focal point, that one person
Hmm.
that you seek or desire to please, which is God. And then
Wow.
everything else follows. I mean, I think some people might say, some people will be born with a measure of gift that is so high because the Bible is very clear. Some had one talent, some had two, some had three, some had five, some had 10. So if I'm not a person 10 talents, why am I going to kill myself that,
Trying to
or get
build 10.
myself upset that God did not give? God saw it fit to give me 3 talents, or saw it fit to give me 5 talents. So let me hone the 5 talents. Let me use the 5 talents to the best of my ability. And for me, the way to be able to be content, now that doesn't mean that you shouldn't seek to improve yourself. In everything, we must seek to improve ourselves, bring our best to God. But as long as you know, and I always say to the choir that just make sure that you're giving your best, because my best may be your best. Even in terms of commitment, some people are committed at 20%, some people are committed at 100%. The mistake we make sometimes is we try to make everybody commit at 100%. The truth is that person's 20% might actually be 100% to go because we're all in different situations. So for me, I just focus on this is what God has given me. I cannot do the runs like this person. I cannot sing like this person. So the junk of don't yourself with anybody. Just focus on God and make sure that each time you are bringing your best. And you see, I said to myself that a good voice certainly helps worship. It's a massive distraction if somebody can't be on, if they can't hold their notes, if they're all over the place. You also don't want that. But better
Let me
than
ask you something here for me, because this is two things before we leave this your experience. You touched on something here. You said you see some people who are the person you were, and your heart immediately goes out to them. How
Yeah.
easy or difficult is it to lead, particularly choir members, volunteers, when you haven't had the kind of experience you have had?
That's actually interesting because you are correct, and I guess maybe that's where I was going when I said somebody will come in with 10 talents, so they can they can do it just like that. They're born with musical bones, and they just can't do everything. They can even lead worship. There's a call, there's an anointing with such a person. But sometimes what we tend to see is that there needs to be character being to sustain the gift. So
Mm,
with people like that, it's very difficult to tell them that you can't do it. So you have to create a balance where you allow them in their gifts, and you also come into a place where you can call them and say, actually, you do this, or I think you should do this. What do you think God feels about this? Helping them build their characters. Not everyone's journey is going to be like mine in any way. Some people are going to come
mm.
in flying, and they're going to be leading from when they're very young age, and they're going to be extremely successful. I think what is needed more than anything is for those around such people to help them build their character, so that as they go higher, they have the ability to sustain what it is that God is doing with them.
Wow. Okay, let me ask this question a bit differently, because you've talked about the skill side of things. It's good to have the skill, and the distraction that comes when someone can't really sing on key, and all those sorts of things. How about the challenge of having to lead worship without instruments?
Um, I don't really, I mean, instruments, of course, make it sweeter. Instruments, of course, help you do less work because, there's that you can ride on the music when you're leading worship. And, sometimes a lot of what you might want to do in your ad libs, you can hear it in the strings, or you can hear it in the guitar, and it just helps you go there. But I don't think that the music should be what drives us, because worship is not music. Worship is first a lifestyle. So I can worship God by just speaking. I can praise him in words. So it shouldn't really stop us from doing it. Is an extra tool, that yes, is nice to have, but the core of the being able to worship God, that's really from the heart. So you can definitely lead people in worship without because like I said, worship, music is just a form
Mm,
of worship. Is a type of expression. It's not worship in its entirety. So if you're leading people, and they can't go anywhere because there's no music, then
that's the problem.
there's probably, yeah.
Okay, let me move this conversation forward. COVID-19 has obviously had a major impact in terms of how people have been able to worship together. Instrumentalists are not there. Choir members are all in different places, and things like that. Now, what I'm going to do, I believe I have something here which would be interesting. But what I want to do is this: I want to show you this clip. I saw something on YouTube of you leading a song in the context of COVID-19, the lockdown, and all of that. So let's watch this, and then we come back to talk about it and what that experience has been like for you. Watch this.
Get up on your feet and let's give him praise. He's been good. He's been good. Every praise is to our God. Every word of worship
All right, for me, how difficult was the transition from seeing the people, seeing everybody coming into church to that experience we just saw on that clip? How difficult was that transition for you?
It was, it was extremely difficult because you've got to remember that you're leading nobody, absolutely nobody, in your living room, wherever it is that you're doing it. It's just the music in your ear, and it's you leading people. So I went sometimes because if I remember the times that I've done this at home, I always used to say to my husband when I watched it back, like I look schizophrenic because even I when I'm watching it back can't hear the music, so the music is in my ear, and when you watch the video back, you're basically dancing and doing all these things to nothing. So it looks, it's not a pleasant sight, I have to say. One thing that I would say has really helped is, and I hope that because in every bad situation there's always a good that God intends or He brings out. I found that if you don't have a worship life in terms of the expression of music for yourself, and you have been practicing that at home before COVID, you probably will struggle because a lot of us ride on the atmosphere. Great. I mean, I miss that. I miss all of us together in a one room with our hands lifted up, worshiping God. I miss the whole, just the experience, the fact that, God is looking down and all these people worshiping Him. I miss the faces of the people when you feel like they really met with God in their worship. I miss seeing people fall on their knees just to give God worship. I miss all of that. But the one thing I realized that if you haven't been able to cultivate the habit and your experience was only ever in church, then this period will be difficult. If you've been cultivating that habit by yourself, then there are times when you have to switch off, and there are times when in leading worship in that manner that you've just shown, I just switch off. It's another day for
Let me
me
let
with
me ask
God.
you something here for me. You mentioned saying you miss obviously seeing people caught in the atmosphere of worship and all of that. How about when the crowd or the people are not being responsive? How does that affect you as the minister?
Um, I laugh because sometimes we go back as a choir and we say, "Oh wow, people were hard," which means that they didn't respond. It means that they didn't. If you almost feel like you didn't do what you're supposed to do, point them, take them into the presence of God. But you know what? I always say, by the time we get to that point, because of course you see it all the time, and I think in our services actually we always say that the first service people are the people who easily get in because they've woken up, they haven't had to deal with life, they've just come straight to church. And the second service people have spoken to so many people, dealt with so many people, have had fights, and therefore they're the harder ones. But when we're standing in front of them, and I speak for myself, the one thing that once I notice that this thing is looking like that, you encourage, then you just start to focus because you see, let me focus on bringing the presence. So when it comes down, they're going to connect because no creation
Mm,
of God can truly, especially
mm.
when you've come to the presence of God in a church, you have some level of connection, is why you're there. Then you won't be able to really resist that. So I take my eyes off whether I feel they're looking hard or not hard. Let me focus on worshiping. Let me focus on bringing it down. A few people will connect. The truth is, it's not everybody that you're going to be able to lead into the presence. So it's not happen. It's not, and that's some worship leaders need to accept. And we need never to measure ourselves on how many people were face down, how many people had their hands lifted up. That's a trap because we're not God. We don't know what's going on there. So we just need to do what we have to do and let God do the rest.
let me ask you another question here. Which for me, anytime I have to minister the word or anything, um, and it's one of the reasons we're having this conversation on, and we've been having it on Tuesdays, is that music is so important to me. For me, there's certain things that once I hear certain chords, or it just does something to me. How do you manage the minister, where the minister is looking for something and it feels like maybe the choir is not really getting that, or certain ministers flow better with certain sounds and things like that, and they're like, I'm not feeling you, I'm not feeling. How do you deal with that?
No, I always say, I mean, for me, what we do is service. So, sometimes the truth is you're there, and sometimes you're even thinking, I don't even know what you want. What do you want? You feel that in your heart because you feel like maybe you're not really meeting the need of Mr. But for me, if it is communicated, if they say, well, this is not, I'm not feeling it, then, I think you have to ask, okay, what would you like me to do? Do you have a song in mind? Because you have to first remember that you are serving. You are serving. And I always say that, sometimes people will say, but, I felt God said we should do this. The minister said, you can never, in the presence of God, if the Bible says that obedience is better than sacrifice, and God has put somebody in authority, you better be in obedience. Let God deal with whichever minister is not in line. It is not your place. It is never our place to say that we didn't feel that God was saying what the minister was saying. So if the minister communicates something, even if you feel that, oh, this is how I feel we should be going, and the minister says is this direction, you just go with that. So
Oh,
whenever
so
there's a
do you
coming
have
of,
those kind of issues in the choir where
oh,
people
that's very
feel,
cool. Where, yeah, where people might feel like this is the direction, and the minister might feel this is the direction. So,
oh wow.
there's wondering like, okay, what should I do here? Always say you have to submit to whatever the minister is saying. You just have to be prepared to junk the songs that you believe was given to you by God. Be prepared. God is not an author of confusion. And I think also sometimes we might feel like, oh, we heard God, but we didn't hear God. And we have to be ready to say, if God says these are the songs that are going to be done today, He told you that song you should do today, then you get to church and the pastor changes the song, then I say God cannot be confused, which means that there was something wrong in that time when you felt that there was a communication, that you felt God. You have to be
Mm.
willing to say, well, I guess if this is the song we've done and we've gone home, we've closed the church, those songs that God spoke to you about didn't happen. Did God really say, or were they your desires? So
Mm.
to answer your question, if those things happen, then I would always go with what if the minister is able to communicate. Because sometimes it's not communicated. You might hear it afterwards that, oh, I didn't feel that you went in the right direction. And nobody should ever be offended with that. It's like, well, just pray for more sensitivity. Sometimes it's communicated straight away that, oh, I think you should change the songs. And to be honest, that's one of the things I really love about my pastor. He would just say, no, change the songs. And I'd rather that actually than we go through a whole experience and the minister feels like that wasn't what I wanted because we've not really done what we should do. So it's better to just, as painful as it is, stop it and let's do the right thing.
Mm. How difficult has it been in this sort of uh, COVID-19 lockdown world as it is today, for you to have that sort of pastoral oversight over the choir members and understanding what people are going through and trying to see how you can help them in that space? How difficult has this been?
It has been a little difficult. I mean, of us who the choir and look after the people. And what we do is we meet we have a meeting every couple of weeks. It used to be weekly before, every Saturday morning. So we'll have like a town hall where we'll meet the people, talk to them, and then we'll pick people out, random people. Like if we feel like somebody hasn't been on the calls for a while, we'll just invite them to tell us how they're doing on the call before we then go on to ask people, talk about talking your mind and pray about people's issues, give them announcements. It has obviously it's tough because you're not seeing them as you should. So that's meeting we have on Saturdays is an avenue. Then of course they're one to one, and we're still obviously church is still going on. Two of us, not that many because of number restrictions, are still
Mhm.
seeing ourselves. And then we also have like a welfare team who we call them our police. So sometimes people are going through stuff, they tell somebody who tells somebody. So we always say it must come back to us so that we can fix whatever the issue is and help the person or the people.
At that
So
time.
yeah,
Okay.
we do the best we can with technology to follow people up.
All right. So let me move this conversation a little bit towards this issue where people believe that, some people anyway, that if someone is a worship leader, they have to have, an album out there or release singles and things like that. What is your take on that?
Um, I think obviously, I personally, I mean, I don't have an album, and I always say one of the reasons why is because I want to jump on the bandwagon. Um, I don't want to feel any pressure in any way. I mean, my younger sister is she's great. She's got albums out. She's doing fantastic with her music, but that has not put me under any pressure at all. And I'm sure that if I wanted one, it could be fixed really quickly because she's got a lot of experience. However, I don't want to do it because other people are doing it. Do you know what I want? I want to bring out something that God has asked me to. I've seen so many people release songs, bring albums out, and it doesn't really go anywhere. Now, my sister-in-law actually was having a conversation with me, and she said to me, "Oh, Funmi, are you going to think of doing an album?" I was saying this thing to her where I said, "Oh, but I don't want to be release an album or put a song out there and it just doesn't go anywhere." And she said to me, "For me, some songs are for millions of people, some songs are for thousands, some are for just 20 people. You never know who you're going to bless. Just bring it out." So I said to her, definitely, if God instructs me to do it, if God, now is the time. And I do that has, the Holy Spirit has laid on my heart that I've, written and put somewhere. As soon as I feel that, it's time to get these songs out there, I would definitely do it. I don't think that there's an automatic thing where if you lead worship, you must have an album. I think that that's undue pressure on the worship leader to feel like because I'm a worship leader, I have to have an album. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have an album or maybe it's leading you in that direction or you feel that it's what you should do, but I don't think that we should put ourselves under pressure that it must happen because I lead worship. I must have an album. I always say that if you're in a workplace and your job is to say, for example, you're an accountant, your job is to fix the accounts. And then along with your job or your role comes benefits. You can use the gym. You can, you get 50% off, you get nursery vouchers. It would not make sense to home in on the getting the gene. I think that what is your role? Home in on that. You're being paid to be an accountant. Home in on being an accountant. Now the benefits, which is why they are benefits, they are extras that can come. It can be given to you. So first of all, what is our role? Our role is to lead people into the presence of God. Our role is to be a signpost to allow God to hear the voice of his people, to allow his loved ones to come and meet him in that place of worship. Let's focus on that. And then everything else is
Will
benefits,
follow. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question. Again, we're at a time and a season where people are looking to develop themselves in whatever it is they're doing. People are looking for opportunities to get out there to do something that maybe they get recognized for. Um, where do you draw the line from those who say, you know what, um, I'm in the choir, I sing in the choir, but that stardom attraction is there, and they're constantly being drawn to uh, other types of music, maybe releasing albums that are maybe not necessarily gospel albums, but they're just talented. How do you balance the skill side of things with the heart side of things that need to come together to create the worship experience like it's done for you? How do you bring those two things together?
For me, I always say that because we see that all the times. I always say the first question we all need to ask ourselves is, what is our motive? What is our motive? So, people, some people join a group, a singing group, a choir, for other reasons, not necessarily because they want to worship God. And then there's the hunger, the desire, like you said, for the stage, and then they get the stage and they want more outside and more outside and more outside, more outside. For me, I think, and those things are very hard to manage, because what you also don't want to do is to make people not believe in their dreams. And that's something that I believe that only an individual can really answer. Why are you doing what you're doing? What is your motive? And if you search yourself really well, you should be able to get the answer. Are you doing it because you believe that your music will bring people to God? Or are you doing it for yourself, for your name, for the stage, for the fame? Because these are two different things. I don't think that, and because you see, if you asked anyone, they're going to tell you that I'm doing it for God. Only God knows who is doing anything for him, and that's the truth. So you can't necessarily say, I don't believe you are, you're not doing it for God. The one thing I would always say is, just make sure you have searched the reason why you're doing it. Make sure that your worship is not diluted. So you're not
Mm.
doing things because it's the in thing to do. You're not doing things because it's what everybody is doing. Then your focus and your devotion has really moved from who you say you are doing it for. You must always stay on track, because the truth is, there are people who, it's a godly desire. God says you are bigger than here. Is God
Wow.
giving them that? Bigger than here? You are for the world. You are to evangelize to in this place. I've called you to this place. There are people like that. So only God knows what is the responsibility of the individual, is to just make sure that their motive, they question themselves thoroughly before you embark on it. Because if you be a star, as God will put you out there, trust me, you'll be extremely successful. If the hand of God is upon you, it will be known. You won't even need to do anything, it will be known. But
Mm.
if you go by yourself, then you run the risk of missing it. It's
So
something that is common now, and
let me ask you this question. We've got about 4 minutes to the end of the program, but let me ask you this question. If there were two things that you want to see change in the music ministry in the future, what would those two things be?
for me, really meaning what you say, being genuine. I mean, the Bible is very clear that God desires those. I mean, the Bible doesn't tell us anything that he wants. He seeks worshippers who will worship him in spirit and in truth. Let our worship be true. Can it be that all these things that we see in the Bible, that the presence of God brings, the people that get up and walk, the people that see, Are those things now no longer existing? So for me, what I would say I want to see is true worship, genuine worship. Let's not have underlying motives where it's about self, because God can see those things. We don't want to waste years of saying we're serving God, only for us never to get a well done, because God, it really wasn't for me, it was for yourself. So I think for me, it's just if God is saying in truth, genuine worship, let's give that to Him. And then also, let's not turn what is meant to be for God, this gift that He's freely given to us, into a money making scheme. Let's separate the two. For me, that will be the one thing that I desire, and that the worship of God, that we are good ambassadors for God, so that our children's children can carry on the worship of God. Because as we know, all these places, Syria, they were all places where, God was their God. They were their nations, and somehow that's been eradicated. So for me, the worship of Jehovah must carry on, must carry on. Those are my desires.
For me, I want to say a big thank you for tonight. This has been super, super amazing. Just listening to you talk about your stories, the leadership principles that you have talked about there. I can just imagine people going through the kind of rejection you went through. Could just need to stick it out a little bit longer, drop that sense of self a little bit more and just accept the challenge that has been put before you. Keep on with it, keep going with it. And your story, I'm sure, will be an inspiration to so many people. If Fumi could do it, I can do it. And please, 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 your story needs to go out a lot more. They need to know what you went through. You see, because there's something I say, and this is my parting shot for the program tonight, that at one point in time, your greatest mentor was going through a situation that was similar to what you are going through. You may look at them today and think, my goodness, look at where Fumi is today. But her journey when she was where you were is also important. And you have shared that with us tonight. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for this. I will join you in the virtual studio shortly, but thank you. Few announcements to our viewers, and I will be back. Thank you
Thank you.
again for me.
Thank you.
Wow, wow, wow. Now, look, I would encourage anyone watching this video, if you watched it live, go back to those principles that Fumi talked about there. She mentioned them in her story. Don't let rejection derail you from your destiny. Don't let the messages that people have put out there about you derail you. People are entitled to their opinion. You follow what God has spoken to you about and what God is doing in your own life. Don't be disappointed. Don't be discouraged, because there are great things ahead for you. And like she said, her grandma played a part in her life. She sings, her sister or sisters sing as well. This is a time we've been talking about legacy. I want to encourage you all. There is something in your past that you can go back to that will deliver very, very strong and rich experiences in your future. Thank you for joining us on this programs, and we trust that you have been blessed. Our programs continue on Thursday, and if you have some time, do join us. And God bless you mightily for being with us on this program, Legacy 322. See you for the next program.